Eddie Moreno on behalf of Sierra Club California in strong support.
Jamie Miner from Nimala Pappas and Associates, representing Marin Clean Energy in support. Look forward to working with the author on clarifying amendments to address equitable cost allocation among load-serving entities. Thank you.
Sandra Spelisi on behalf of the Planning and Conservation League in support.
Erin Nimala representing large-scale solar, 26,000 construction jobs since 2010, and also the Energy Efficiency Council and Next Gen Climate Action in support. Thank you.
Argelia Leon on behalf of Pacific Ethanol in support.
Mr. Chairman, Duncan McFetters representing the American Wind Energy Association in strong support.
Kelly Catlett with the California Hydropower Reform Coalition in strong support of the bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Rico Mastrodonato with the Trust for Public Land in support.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Ryan Kennedy, Clean Energy and Clean Energy Renewable Fuels in strong support.
Kelly Dale on behalf of California League Conservation Voters in strong support.
Jonathan Nelson on behalf of BYD Motors and Wireless Advanced Vehicle Electrification in support. Thank you.
Thanks.
Ken Jones with 350 Bay Area. We are in support. We would like to see it move a little faster, maybe to 80% by 2030, and we'd also like to see distributed generation highlighted a little more than it is in this bill.
Mr. Chair, Member Cesar Diaz on behalf of the 400,000 men and women of the State Building and Construction Trades Council in strong support. Thank you.
Michael Pimentel on behalf of the Advanced Energy Economy in support.
Nick Lapis with Californians Against Waste in support.
I'm against waste.
Brian Early with Environmental Defense Fund in support. We'd like to thank the authors of this bill for highlighting the role that demand response and other zero greenhouse gas emitting technologies can play in integrating renewables into 50% RPS. And I'd like to continue to work with the author to make sure these resources are highlighted. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Cortez Roth on behalf of the California Wind Energy Association in strong support. We support the 50%, the framework of the existing RPS, and we believe this target is both affordable and attainable. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Ong on behalf of the American Lung Association of California, and we are in support of this bill.
Hi, I'm Will Barrett, also with the American Lung Association California. Also wanted to represent the support of the American Cancer Society, California Thoracic Society, American Academy of Pediatrics, and about two dozen other public health organizations in strong support of this bill. Thank you.
Jim Lindberg on behalf of the Friends Committee on Legislation of California in support.
Estrella Service on behalf of the California Environmental Justice Alliance, and we represent around 15,000 low-income communities of color in strong support, and we especially appreciate the inclusion of the disadvantaged communities language in there.
Jeannie Wardwaller with the California Bicycle Coalition in support.
I figured that out.
Hi, Purin Shaw with Asian Pacific Environmental Network in support, in particular, the framework of the RPS.
Jamie Hall with CalSTART. We work with about 150 clean transportation companies. We are in strong support of the petroleum reduction portion.
Good morning. Amy Trainer with the West Marin Environmental Action Committee and the California Coastal Protection Network in strong support. Thank you. Good morning. Gareth Elliott with the Solar Energy Industries Association in strong support.
Good morning. Charles Watson on behalf of Adagen in support. Thank you.
Good morning. Katrina Robinson on behalf of Audubon, California in support.
Danielle Lynch on behalf of the California Association of Local Conservation Corps in support.
Ignacio Hernandez on behalf of the Utility Reform Network, or TURN, in support of the bill.
Matt Reed on behalf of Breathe California and the Breathe California affiliates in support.
Fabiola Lau on behalf of the Coalition for Clean Air in support.
Joshua Stark, representing Transform, an organization for sustainable and equitable land use transportation, asking for your vote out of committee in support. Thank you.
All right, those are the supporters. Before we hear from the opposition, staff report does raise an issue. Mr. Liepert, if you can address it. It doesn't specifically say 1990. It's 50% of what level? And it was sort of, I don't know if it's a drafting omission, but we want to be some clarification of what is the 50%, what's the baseline?
Mr. Chairman, if I understood the analysis correctly, that's a reference to the petroleum reduction goal, the 50% petroleum reduction goal. And it doesn't state it explicitly, but it would be a reduction goal from the date on which the law takes effect, which would be 1/1/2016.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, let's hear from opposition of SB 350.
Mr. Chairman and members, Eloy Garcia for the Western States Petroleum Association. In opposition, but specifically to with regard to the petroleum section, a lot of support here today for the RPS, energy efficiency. We do not have a position on those components of the bill, and we've been clear with Mr. Lipper and with Mr. De Leon. Our focus and our concern is with the broad mandate with one simple line. In fact, the amendments that you just took are the most detail we've had with regard to the petroleum section. What the bill says essentially is Air Board, go make it happen, and that concerns us. It concerns us, and it should concern you, that you are absolutely having no input into how the Air Board makes it happen. Prior legislatures have dealt with the petroleum reduction strategies in the past, but what they have done is they have sent the regulators, prior legislation in 2000 said, Energy Commission, go and tell me how we would make petroleum reduction happen. Bring me back a plan. Let me know what policies you would adopt, and they did that. In 2002, the Energy Commission brought a plan to the legislature, and most of the strategies were increasing fuel efficiency through CAFE standards or through pricing mechanism, which was increasing the cost of driving for your constituents and Californians. That's how you do it. That's the detail that's not in this bill. It's not in the bill, but it is in plans that the various state agencies are pursuing today. The Air Board says we need vehicle miles traveled. We need to reduce vehicle miles traveled. The California Transportation Plan, or the draft transportation plan for 2040, says we do that by increasing the cost of driving by 75%. That's the cost of driving to your constituents that you're approving here, essentially. Without putting details in, you're giving the state agencies a blank check to do it however they seem necessary to make it happen. We've mentioned this point before, and we'll continue to mention, we need more details here. I think the public needs more details. U.S. policymakers need more details. Are you proposing to make less fuel available, to increase fuel efficiencies, increase your SB 375 targets? A little bit more detail, I think, is warranted and would certainly help the public make better informed decisions about what we're doing here. And the last point I'll make is, the governor issued an executive order today, just this morning. We're going long on climate change. What's the relationship between these bills and the executive order? We need to better understand whether this is the same, a petroleum reduction target is the same as a greenhouse gas reduction target. We don't think they're the same. And we as an industry have taken a support position on extending a cap and trade program. We think that's the preferable approach. We need to make changes to the current program, but we think that's a preferable approach. So we're not here saying we oppose climate change and we oppose having a long-term climate policy, but a petroleum reduction target without details is not the same thing. And for that very narrow reason, we oppose this bill.
As tempting as it may be to amend bills on the fly, given the governor's press release down in Los Angeles, as the chair, I'm not going to allow that. I have a bill on climate adaptation, and a portion of the attention from this morning's press release was done on climate adaptation. We're going to deal with the bill with all its warts or its inadequacies as today, but suggestions that they have more detail is certainly welcomed by this chair. Next in opposition.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Michael Shaw with California Manufacturers and Technology Association. Echo the comments of Mr. Garcia a moment ago regarding the petroleum reduction. One additional point I would note on that is currently that is the primary funding source for California roads and highways. So if we go and cut petroleum, we need to be looking at another way to fund those roads, because there still will be vehicles on those roads, whether they're powered by electricity, petroleum products, or otherwise. Addition to that, we have concerns about the impact that SB 350 would have on the already excessively high electricity rates that California manufacturers are paying. Currently, California industrial ratepayers pay rates that are about 74% above the national average. meaning that they are paying rates that are that much higher than what the average in the rest of the country is. Our rates are only exceeded by those in Alaska and Hawaii, which for obvious reasons would likely have higher rates. So we have the highest rates in the nation by far. That creates a powerful disincentive for growing manufacturing jobs in California. And one point I would note about that is jobs in California, by definition, are cleaner than they are anywhere else. The laws that California, the legislature has implemented in the past have reduced air quality impacts, have reduced water quality impacts, have generally improved the quality of California's environment, and that's very visible in a number of ways. California manufacturers have paid for that opportunity, or to create that opportunity for all Californians to be a part of. We do have concerns that the SB 350, in pursuit of particularly a renewable energy portion at 50%, would create affordability issues, would also create reliability issues. Cal ISO has noted this in the past, noting that we would likely enter, as we are on occasion currently, with a 33% RPS standard, entering periods of overgeneration where we are producing more power than Californians can consume. That puts us in one of two situations. We either have to curtail production of those energy resources, particularly some of the cleaner ones, or potentially, and perhaps worse, puts us in a negative price situation where we're forced to pay other states to take our electricity. California is making a number of steps in technology to help reduce the impacts of that, but the fact of the matter is currently that's where we are. And by this point in time, by the deadline set in this bill, it's unlikely that we would reach a point where we could compensate for that sufficiently. So for those reasons, California manufacturers are in opposition to SB 350.
Thank you. Before we hear from others opposed to SB 350, we do have a quorum. Let's establish that. Assistant, please call the roll.
Senators Wachowski?
Aye. I mean here.
Wachowski here. Gaines? Bates? Bates here. Hill? Here. Hill here. Jackson? Leno?
Here.
Leno here. Pavley? Here. Pavley here.
Thank you. Others opposed to SB 350?
Amy Magro on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce. We are opposed to this as a job killer. This is setting very large, unrealistic, and arbitrary goals, and it's not taking into account the cost to ratepayers, jobs, and the economy in California.
Thank you, Chair. Tom Jacob on behalf of the Chemical Industry Council, opposed for the reasons articulated. Thank you.
Others.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Gil Topidi. I'm the Energy Director for the California Municipal Utilities Association, representing 40 locally owned public electric utilities. We don't have a position on the bill, but we do have concerns, and some of those concerns do echo what the Large Manufacturers Association representative mentioned, that in the pursuit of creating jobs, and we're all for the creation of jobs, we have to be careful as this bill moves forward in considering what do we do with all that generation if right now there are forecasts that show not only overgeneration issues where it's in excess of what we need to use in California, there are what was described as the negative market. There are certain times of a day, of certain months, where electricity costs in California are in the negative, meaning to then use that, because electricity by its very nature has to go somewhere. So you have to find somebody who's willing to accept it and use it on their system. And with a negative market, the utility then pays that person to take that electricity from them. So we want to work with the author on this. We believe the governor has a broader vision on reaching a 50% renewable energy resources, and whether you call it optionality, an integrated approach, or flexibility, we think there's a totality of other resources, smart grid, the electrification of vehicles. As we get to the 50% reduction in petroleum, that responsibility will then be incurred on the energy side to make sure that those vehicles are charged and at the right time. We want to avoid these problems. The problems are not going to be there's going to be imminent blackouts. That won't happen. What's going to happen is we're going to have to curtail some of these resources, and it's probably going to be going on the selling of assets that all of our customers, as utility customers who paid for these systems, was it incumbent upon them to build out an excess of that power with our customers' money, and then have them go out and pay for another out-of-state utility to buy that. That's the biggest worry here. We hope we can work with the author on a more broader perspective on achieving these goals together, and we look forward to the bill advancing. Thank you.
Next. In opposition? Nobody's in? Must be somebody else opposed.
Karen Mills for the California Farm Bureau Federation in opposition to the bill.
John Larrea with the California League of Food Processors. I noticed on the thing that we were not listed in opposition. I don't know why that was the case, but we are in opposition, and I'll remedy that this week. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Julianne Broyles here on behalf of the Family Business Association, as well as the Associated Builders and Contractors of California. We're on the coalition letter in opposition to SB 350 as it currently stands.
Mr. Chair and members, Matthew Harg with the California Business Properties Association. Just quickly want to mention the piece of the bill that we're specifically concerned about, and that's existing building energy efficiency. We think there is a way for the state to get there. The Energy Commission is currently working on a plan for existing building energy efficiency. We think that they're doing a fine job looking at that. And the issue with this piece of legislation is we think that the legislature might want to focus some resources and some incentives on those buildings that were built prior to California's Title 24. And we think we can get there, but lumping all buildings into one single 50% reduction might be very difficult. Thank you.
And remind me when Title 24 came into effect. What year are we looking at?
1978 was passed. 82 was
Okay.
about when it was really come into effect.
All right. Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Matthew Allen, representing Western Growers Association. We are also in opposition to the bill.
Mr. Chair, members, Cindy Howe with Southern California Edison. We have comments on the bill. We're not in opposition. Southern California Edison is well on its way to achieving the 33% RPS by 2020. We recognize that moving to 50% renewables is significant. Edison recognizes that as we work to achieve the state's climate goals, moving toward the 2050 goal, much more renewables will be part of that equation, as will distributed generation, energy efficiency, and transportation electrification. Southern California Edison supports an integrated approach working toward the 2050 goal. We support a straight line path that would allow for a 50% emission reductions in the electric sector based on 2012 data. We have been working with the author's office and will continue to do so, and we appreciate the committee's time. Thank you.
Heidi Barsuli on behalf of San Diego Gas and Electric. We don't have a formal position on the bill at this time, but especially in light of the governor's executive order issued today, which in part establishes GHG reduction goal of 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. We do very much believe that it is time for California to look at ways to achieve overall climate objectives from a more global perspective, including reevaluation of existing mandates, and it may well include utilization of a more comprehensive approach to achieve carbon pollutant reductions overall. Moving forward, we do agree with SB 350 that all load-serving entities should be treated equally, all participating in clean energy mandates with the same requirements and consequences for noncompliance. And we believe the state should explore all alternative fuels and alternative fuel vehicle infrastructure that will be necessary moving forward. We also think the state should consider revising rules governing our energy efficiency programs so that resources can be used for incentives to bring buildings closer to code, not just to exceed building codes. We do look forward to working with the author to develop a framework to achieve comprehensive GHG reduction while also managing costs, creating jobs, and ensuring reliability, and look forward to working with the author.
Mario DiBernardo from the Northern California Power Agency. We represent 15 local public agency, publicly owned utilities, including City of Santa Clara and City of Palo Alto. We have concerns about the bill. We thank the author for listening to our concerns. Chief among them are the generation challenges that were discussed in the E3 report. We'd love a public forum to discuss the E3 report, if that pleased the committee or anyone else in the legislature, and we look forward to future discussions on this. Thank you.
Matt Klopfenstein with the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. We also do not have a position on the bill. We've been working closely with the author's office and appreciate that, and we'll continue to work with them. And we are fully supportive of the ideas of the bill and the goals. We would just like to see an approach that allows utilities to use all the clean resources they can. Thank you.
Kent Kaus with Pacific Gas and Electric. We're in the same category as the other utilities. We support the governor's overall objectives, moving to a cleaner GHG portfolio, energy efficiency, electric vehicles, renewables will certainly be a part. We just think we can get to those broader goals without specific mandates, and we'll continue to work with the author.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members. P. Anthony Thomas, California Independent Petroleum Association. We do not have an issue or an opposition to the RPS section of the bill, but I want to associate my comments with my counterpart, Mr. Garcia. Has some concerns certainly about the 50% reduction in petroleum. I believe that the legislature could be better directed in talking about how to curtail demand as opposed to what is currently written in 350.
Others opposed to SB 350? All right, let's bring it back to the committee. Senator Leonard, we heard a lot of comments on, I guess I don't want to parse this out, but on the energy side of this, which was dealt with the Energy, Utilities, and Transportation Commission, this is the Environmental Quality Committee. So like yesterday, I was on Judiciary, dealt with the due process challenges of the vaccination, not all the health and all the others. So if you could, they raised some questions about a more comprehensive or general standard, and if you can address some of the concerns that were raised with the environmental quality lens, we'd appreciate that.
Certainly. I'll do my best, and you are right to focus the conversation of this committee on environmental quality. But since the opposition was not as restrained as you're suggesting, I do want to get back to some of their comments. And let me begin by saying this is a bold vision bill. There's nothing minor about it. And so it will impact many industries and many organizations in many ways. And I want to be respectful of all of the voices that were here today and the concerns expressed. At the same time, I'm going to attempt to respond to some of the lowest hanging fruit and let Mr. Lippert get some of the higher ones. It's been said that this will be a job killer bill. Gets a little tired after a while. The Solar Foundation's annual solar census states that California's solar industry, so just focusing on solar, employed nearly 55,000 people in 2014. That's employment growth of 15.8% over the previous year. That rate of employment growth was more than 10 times greater than the overall state economy. Solar companies expect to expand employment another 17% in the calendar year, another 10,000 additional jobs. This is anything but job killing, and they really should get some better talking points. Arbitrary goals, it was arbitrary when we set 20% for our RPS. You got to start somewhere. But it changed the way we do business in the state and around the country, and the world's following us. We then upped it to 33%, created even more jobs, strengthened our economy even further, and further addressed the very serious fact, coming back to this committee, of climate change and the need to continue to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. That's what this is all about, saving the planet. And what we found along the way, which was Senator Pavley's suggestion nearly 10 years ago, was that we can build a stronger economy simultaneously. These are not counterintuitive, that they in fact work together. And if it weren't for the fact that we were so forethoughtful, we would be in much sorrier shape and would find ourselves not unlike many other states right now, which are trying to find their way into new economies. California gets 60% of all venture capital invested in this country. A lot of it is coming into these industries. So that's to address those comments.
Is he Senator Pavley or the thoughtful Senator Pavley? Do you have a query of the authors of this measure?
And I'm also happy to address overgeneration and this concept of a blank check to ARB if you'd like.
I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you very much. Then I have to go vote in another committee, but certainly supporting this. And listening to the testimony. It's actually, a lot of it's been since starting in 2001 and 2, a lot of the same comments. But what this bill does is set targets. There can be implementing policies along the way as reviewed in broad stakeholder analysis, either through statute, through the policy committees here in the legislature, or through stakeholder hearings by CARB or Energy Commission or wherever the appropriate place is, so that this is not the last word on all those implementing policies. For example, there's a bill later on today, and other members in the other House have bills in looking at lower carbon alternative fuels to help the reduction policy in the petroleum use. We had that interesting hearing on the sort of oligarchy in the fuel supply business here in this state.
We did.
So broadening alternative fuels can accomplish both objectives, reducing the volatility in the fuel sector and also making sure that they're lower carbon fuels creating the marketplace. I want to just highlight there was testimony that there was some concern about the CEC past reports. I know when those were, like 2001 and 2. I heard them along the way. That was not connected to any policy or targets. They were asked to look at all different ways to reduce petroleum consumption, because I had to put out the fire for 15 years that the only way to increase fuel efficiency or reduce petroleum consumption is to tax motorists. No, we can have more fuel-efficient cars, right? We can't do fuel efficiency, but we can reduce emissions standards, which makes them more fuel efficient in this car. So sometimes those old arguments, I think we're smarter now than we were. So this is a bill that just sets targets. And I appreciate people like Edison coming up and saying, they want to be part of this, want to be part of the solution. I want to hear from people. We're sending the market signals out there. If you opened up the Times 2 weeks ago, amazing what's happening in the battery storage arena. So market signals sent the target for investment into this state on these new technologies. Are the numbers secured in stone? Maybe not, but I think consistency with the governor's objective, which I think this bill is important to sending those market signals to the private sector, that this is the time we're open for business, time to invest in innovation. And I thank you very much, Senator Leno and Senator De Leon, for carrying this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Leno, you wanted
Yes.
to continue on your signal on overgeneration.
Just real briefly, with regard to overgeneration, as Senator Pavley points out, major investments are going into energy storage. That's an opportunity for us to soak up energy. Electricity supplies, we can also export some of this electricity if necessary. And then what Cal ISO doesn't mention is that we can also turn down gas plants to make room for the renewables if we got to that point. So we can adjust exactly what we're using currently and what we're going to be bringing online with greater renewables. So there are different ways to adjust and to address the concern for overgeneration. And then with regard to the suggestion is a blank check to the Air Resources Board, I just want to point out that current law already directs CARB to reduce pollution from cars and fuels and vehicle miles traveled and has no limits on what the ARB can do. So this bill simply states that they should do so in furtherance of a 50% reduction in petroleum. And then the bill is actually rather detailed, starting on page 4 for around 3 pages with regards to standards and procedures. So it's really far from a blank check. It's very much in detail as to how this should be played out. And then additionally, current law also requires CARB to look at impacts on the state's economy and in-state jobs.
Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Leeper?
No, sir.
Any questions by members of this committee of the authors? Senator Jackson.
I apologize. This may have been covered. But before I start, you know, the notion that we can't do this, that's just not a California mindset. There's nothing we can't do in California. And I also remember back many decades ago, there was a president who said we're going to send a man to the moon within the decade on a hope and a whim and a prayer. And certainly we kind of put our heads together, and NASA stepped forward. We had a man on the moon within a decade. So I don't think the notion that we're asking too much is something that really is part of the California, or should be part of the California lexicon. So I appreciate the efforts to try to do this. There was a concern in the opposition that I, other than as a job killer, I kind of frankly pride myself in carrying those bills, because I know it means we're going to do something positive and constructive in the state, and that the moniker, I think, is getting tired and old as well. But editorializing aside, the concern was that this measure is going to result in a broad transfer of decision-making authority from the legislature to non-elected regulators, and that that's the part that concerned me. Are we relinquishing our oversight and our authority to make those decisions, and if so, are there some kind of countervailing options so that if the regulators are either conducting themselves without any accountability to us, that we can take steps to change that?
Well, as I just mentioned in response to the chair's question, we as a legislature have already authorized the Air Resources Board with the authority to reduce pollution from cars and fuels and vehicle miles traveled. We are always in the position to give further direction, to reduce authority, extend authority. It is always within our purview. So I don't really understand that criticism at all.
Well, are we giving up what we currently have? I mean, there is some concern, not necessarily justified, but I think there's a potential argument that we don't want to give away the authority that we are supposed to exercise in the process. I just want to make sure that we are not giving up more with this program, what the ARB has now, what different regulatory agencies have. I think so far has been fairly effective in terms of the goals, the greenhouse gas goals. I just want to make sure that we aren't going to essentially go overboard and thus relinquish some of our, I think, mandatory oversight and other protections.
So Mr. Lippert can go into greater detail, but again, we're not giving any additional authority to any agencies. We're just saying that everything they have currently should be in furtherance of the 50-50-50. So as Senator Pavley mentioned, these are setting new updated standards as we look out further decades from where we've been, because we've been so successful in getting to the earlier standards that we've set.
And other than sort of the typical opponents, the oil industry and so forth, because we're actually either going to ask them to find alternatives or they're going to be fighting harder for business. Were there any concerns articulated that express concerns from others who represent lower income communities? And if so, is there any response to that, the concern that potentially we're going to be asking them to pay more than they can afford?
No, that was not brought up in the oppositional arguments.
I just note that their concerns were that we would be threatening energy affordability and reliability.
Well, the fact is, the cost of renewables just continues to fall further and further as demand increases, costs fall equally, ever in greater parity with fossil fuels.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anything to add?
Sir.
Senator Pavley, welcome back. Do you have a motion you'd like to make at this time?
Thank you.
glad to move the bill.
Thank you.
Yes, right.
Anything else that you have to add as the author of SB 350?
Joint author and the second one of that. Just lastly, to address Senator Jackson's real concern about disadvantaged communities, that all the environmental justice groups are in support of the bill.
Very good. Please call the roll. Assistant?
Item 8, SB 350 by Senators De Leon and Leno. The motion is due pass and referred to Committee on Appropriations. Senators Wykowski?
Aye.
Wykowski, aye. Gaines? Bates? Bates, aye. Hill?
Oh, I was so excited there for a minute.
That was Bates, aye, correct? Oh, Bates, no, I'm sorry.
She misspoke.
Okay. Bates, no. Hill? Aye. Hill, aye. Jackson? Aye. Jackson, aye. Leno? Aye. Leno, aye. Pavley? Aye. Pavley, aye.
All right, thank you. That matter has 5-1. We'll keep the roll open for the absent member who's here. A little housekeeping for everybody here. It's my intention to call up Senator Leyva next because she may have broken the two-hour period for waiting to present her. And we will hear from her first SB 334 on drinking water, and then SB 398 on green assistance program. Then I will take Senator Allen, and I will take out of order item number 23, SB 637, which deals with suction dredge mining permits. So that will be the third in the line of 29 bills that we're having. But since we have a quorum. Also, item number 18, SB 523 by McGuire regarding school bus replacement. That, on the request of the author, will be a 2-year bill. So we'll move forward with that.